Today we are fortunate to have with us Michael Golden, who is the Vice Chairman of the New York Times Company and President and CEO of the New York Times Regional Media Group. Mr. Golden is a global leader in the emerging world of new media and distribution of information, news, and entertainment. Mr. Golden will provide insights into the evolution of information sharing in this digital world. Mr. Golden was appointed Vice Chairman of the New York Times Company in October of 1997. He was also elected to the company's board of directors that same year. In March 2009, Mr. Golden added to his portfolio the responsibilities of President and Chief Operating Officer of the New York Times Regional Media Group. Mr. Golden served as publisher of the International Herald Tribune from November 2003 to January 2008. And I believe he was in Paris during that time, so he's spent time abroad. And earlier, before he was the CEO, before that time, before he was a publisher, he was a CEO and served on the board of that newspaper's board of directors. Mr. Golden earned a BA degree with honors and a master's degree in education from Lehigh University, and he earned a master's degree in journalism from the University of Missouri and an MBA from Emory University in Atlanta, Georgia. He grew up in Chattanooga, Tennessee. So please give a southern welcome to Michael Golden.
Good evening. It's a real pleasure to be here. You may know, you may not know, the Spartanburg Herald Journal is part of the New York Times Company, and the company has long been proud of this newspaper. Tonight, being here and hearing the wonderful things that are going on in Spartanburg, what this Chanber is doing, seeing this dramatic show of community support, makes us even more proud. I'd particularly like to note the teachers who were honored this evening. There are a couple of teachers who made a significant difference in my life. I know you know the difference you make in people's lives. You're doing God's work. Keep it up, and congratulations for the recognition you got. You don't get enough of it. This is a vibrant, growing community. The story that I heard from David and Jim during dinner about the amount of economic investment that David mentioned is really a testimony to the qualities of this community, to the work that you put into it, to what you do. So congratulations. I am here to talk about the media. There seems to be a lot written about the media. The media loves to write about itself. We do that perhaps to a fault. But if we're going to report on other people, we feel we have to report on ourselves too. So we do that, and you've read about it, the changes that are coming. As I stand here, I'm reminded of the man who walked into the library, stepped up to the counter, and in a bold voice said that he would like to order a hamburger, fries, and a Coke. And the person behind the counter said, "Excuse me, you're in a library." The man said, "Oh, I'm sorry. I'd like to order a hamburger, fries, and a Coke." What I take from that is that it's important to know where you are and why you are there. And certainly we saw that tonight with the great stories that were told. The media business is in what is really a crisis. And it's a crisis that is brought about by a connection of secular influences, those things that dramatic changes in the way we live, the way we function as a society, that don't go away. They continue. That's kind of our definition of a secular change, that it goes on and on. And also, recently, a huge cyclical change, the downturn in the economy and the credit markets that has made life more difficult for all of us and exceedingly difficult for, unfortunately, a large percentage of America and people around the world. And those two things are fundamentally confused, I think, as to which effect is causing what decline in the media business. And when I say the media business now, I'm talking about the news and information part of the media business. And as a result, people assume that it's all going to continue and that what's going on will continue and that newspapers, television stations, radio stations are simply going out of business, and the question is how long they will be around. Well, I am certainly not predicting the demise of our business, but I'm also not here to tell you that it's just a matter of holding on and everything's going to be fine, because I don't think that's the case. I think it's going to take a lot of hard work and a lot of change in the media business to continue and play the vital role that it plays in a community like Spartanburg and communities all over the country and all over the nation. Now, in forecasting the future, I think there are two ways to go about it. One is intuition. I can tell you what I think. And I'll get to that. But before that, I think it's best to try and look at experience and see what can you learn from what's happened, what observable things have already transpired that could give us some indications. And what's happening, I think, that's a profound change is that consumer information is going digital. It has gone digital. And when that happens, there seems to be a pattern, at least I believe there's a pattern, and perhaps I'll convince you that there's a pattern, of behavior that goes on and changes in business. And to explain this, I'm going to talk about the music business. The thing that happens is that when information goes digital, it goes through about three phases, I think. First, it's a boon to the people in that business. It is a new source of revenue, and life looks very, very good. That's followed by a dramatic freedom on the part of consumers as to how they consume the media. And that's quickly followed by enormous disruption in the business model. And that's part of what we're seeing right now in the media business, along with this cyclical downturn. The media business has always been extraordinarily sensitive to cyclical downturns because advertising is one of the first things that gets reduced, and it's a big part of our business. The recording industry, to go back to that example, was started in 1877 by Thomas Edison. And for a little over 100 years, it underwent very patient, very meaningful, but pretty much incremental change as cylinders gave way to discs and finally centered on the 33 album that we all used, at least those of you that are anywhere near my age used to use. And that business was a terrific business, and it brought a lot of joy to people, and it brought a lot of wealth to people, both the performers and the people in the industry. Then in 1982, Sony introduced the CD, and the CD was the first consumer application of digital music. Instead of having a groove that a needle wrote in to give you the sound wave, this was bits and bytes and was translated by electronics into the music that you heard. That was followed in 1988 by the introduction of the MP3 player, a company that I can't remember the name of it right now, and it doesn't actually exist anymore. But that had a dramatic change. That was in 1998. And then in 1999, Napster was introduced. And that's when the music industry really started to change. Now, if we go back and look at what happened, the recording industry moving along, doing very well, 105 years. And the CD came in, and within 3 or 4 years, it was hard to find an album. They disappeared. The CD replaced them quickly, replaced them, in fact, almost overnight, given the history of the industry. And this was a great boon to the recording companies, because if you were listening to music at that time, you probably did the same thing I did. You went out and you repurchased a lot of the music you already owned in CDs. So they got this huge boost in sales that they never really expected. And the industry just had another great leap forward financially. And the CDs were cheaper to produce and distribute, so it was easier to get bands out. So there was also an explosion in the amount of music that you could purchase, and stores had just racks and racks and racks of music. Now, the CD replaced the phonograph so quickly because it did everything a phonograph did, but it did it better. There were no scratches. You didn't have to lift the needle and carefully put it in the groove to play the song, or lift it up carefully and place it back to replay the song. It was all random access, and the sound quality was better, some said. Most said. Some thought it was too pure. I never understood what music that was too pure meant, but some thought that. Now, the other thing that did, what followed that boom, or that increase in sales, and the fact that the music had gone digital, is it gave consumers enormous freedom. If you can put yourself back to 1980, music was something you did in basically two places. You did it in your living room with your home stereo, and you listened to it in the car. In the car, you listened to someone else's music, a radio station usually, and at home, you listened to your own music. But with the music going digital and this explosion in devices, suddenly music is something that you do everywhere. You do it on the way to work, you do it in the gym. It is consumed at a much greater rate and with a dramatic amount of freedom. So there's this huge consumer benefit from it going digital. But then came Napster, and suddenly you didn't have to buy the entire CD. You could buy a song. Or, better yet, from some consumers' perspective, you could simply take it. You didn't have to pay for it at all. So all this music was out there and it was for free. And again, this great explosion in consumption. The recording industry, and it is not coincidence, had the best year it's ever had in 2000. Napster disaggregated that business that quickly, and today Apple has a different version. People are, for the large part, back to paying for music, but 99 cents for a song, thank you, not $12.99 for an album. So great benefit to the consumer, great disruption to the music industry, and we're still experiencing it. Now, it's also important to notice with all that change what did not change. The great bands are still the great bands, and people still want to listen to music. So there was no change in the consumer preference for what kind of music they listened to, what they bought. It's still U2 and a couple of other bands account for the majority of sales, just as they did the equivalent, the Beatles, and before that, the other groups. So the best is still the best, and consumers still want it. That's important, bedrock of a business. Now, this isn't isolated to music. We see the same thing with movies, with CDs, with streaming video. The movie industry is going through a huge transformation, and the movie theater business is going through a lot of dislocation and trying to figure out how to get more people to come in and experience movies in the theater as opposed to at home, on their computer, on an airplane, all the places that you can consume movies. And the same thing's happening in the television industry as they wrestle with Hulu and how to deliver news or to deliver entertainment over the internet. So we see that disruption. Journalism is no exception, the news business. It has gone digital. And the short-term impact from our perspective, from the publisher's perspective, was very similar. In the beginning, the internet was new money. It was newfound revenue, and we saw no reduction in the traditional revenue. And in fact, today, print newspapers still account for about 85% of the revenue of most news and information companies. So it's still a newspaper, a paper-based business. But the internet is obviously having dramatic impact. The audience has expanded, same as we saw with music. In fact, the Spartanburg Herald-Journal has never had a larger audience than it does today. That's true of the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, all of the newspapers in the country. They're reaching more people than they ever dreamed of reaching just in print. But the economics are fundamentally different, and that is the significant challenge to the media business, is the economic model. The demand for great writers is still the same. The demand for information is higher than it ever was, and people want it more immediately. So the big question that I get most places I go is print dead? Is print going away? And I think it's important to draw a distinction between print and paper. And it goes back to the CD model. Because with the CD, music didn't go away. But phonographs did. They disappeared in a hurry. Now, the CD replaced the phonograph near perfectly. The internet does not replace paper perfectly. It is a different experience. You know that for yourselves. If you sit and page through the pages of a newspaper, you learn more, you learn it quicker than if you're looking on the internet. Some people prefer the internet, many people prefer the newspaper, but they are different experiences. So I think paper will be with us until something happens that allows the transfer of information to go as quickly as it does from paper to you, because it is much quicker that way. And there are devices along that kind of give us a glimpse into the future. The Amazon Kindle is one of them. The New York Times now has thousands, tens of thousands of subscriptions on the Amazon Kindle. It's not a bad experience. In fact, it's a good experience. It's not a newspaper experience. But it's conceivable, in fact, easily conceivable, that one day these electronic devices called e-readers will basically replace paper. And when they do, paper will stop being used, but it is still print. And we're seeing the other stage that we saw with music and with movies, and that's the explosion of devices. My guess is that my guess is that all of you are carrying a mobile phone. Many of you are carrying a smartphone, and you use it to receive information. As I walk around, I try to notice how people use their phones, and I find more and more people using it like this than using it like this, because it really is a communication device. And the New York Times Company, across all of its media outlets, serves hundreds of millions of pages of news and information over mobile phones. So what will we see in the future? I think we'll see a future where there are a huge variety of devices. Some people will get their information on e-readers. Some people will get their information on paper. A lot of people will get their information on mobile phones. And there will continue to be more disruptive technology like the Apple iPad that's been announced and is not yet available, but will be, I guess, later this month. It's all different ways of consuming news and information. And just as in the music industry, when suddenly there was an explosion in the number of providers of music, in that case bands, now there's an explosion in the number of providers of news and information. And you can read the Spartanburg Herald-Journal, you can read blogs, you can read newspapers from cities you're not in that you simply didn't have access to in the past. You can read news and information on demand from around the world. So in our business, what do we have to do to make sure that we have a vibrant future and that we can continue to serve Spartanburg with the kind of news and information that you need and deserve about your community? Well, we need a cultural revolution. Warren Buffett's description of a great business is one that it's hard to mess up. Now, the newspaper business used to be a great business. It was hard to mess up. That's not true anymore. What it requires now is a huge amount of innovation. People like Roger Quinn and Mike Smith and their colleagues at the Herald-Journal that are giving you great information on the web, great information in print, great information over mobile, and giving you different kinds of information. So our task in the very near future is to find how we deliver you information digitally to your cell phones, to your PDAs, to your computers, to your e-readers, that becomes as prominent and as important to you as the newspaper has been and is today. And we've got a lot of people working at that very hard, and you'll be seeing a lot of innovation coming from the Spartanburg Herald-Journal, from all the other media companies around, as we try to make sure that our future is just as bright as the future I just heard about from Spartanburg and the Chamber of Commerce here. So with that, I thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here, and look forward to serving you through the Spartanburg Herald-Journal for many years to come. Thank you.